Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 6. The semester I feel like is progressing really well, and we are almost to the midpoint. So, great work so far. So, let's get into what we're going to go over today. I'm just going to touch base quickly on the article critique assignment, your research proposal. Then, we're going to do discussion 5 feedback, and I wanted to talk to you about chapter 9 and then leave you with the week 6 checklist. So as far as chapter 9, that was supposed to be included last week, but I accidentally left it off. My apologies. So you're not responsible for anything for chapter 9 as far as perusal or multiple choice questions or anything like that. But I am going to include a lecture in this week's perusal because a lot of you are interested in the topic for your research proposal. It's about survey research and questionnaires. So that will be included this week. So if that is something that you are doing, you can watch that lecture and then refer to the chapter as needed. So my apologies about that, but it is included this week. So for the article critique, we do have several more people who have partnered up or paired up. So if there's a check, that means that I've already assigned you the assignment in perusal. So this is one group, there's another group, here's a group. Jeff is a group, and then Christian is a group as well. So I know Kelly, you asked where to find the assignment in perusal. So it does have the same name as the one where you signed up. Article critique 1 quantitative. So you should see one that is a personalized assignment for you that is only the article that you are critiquing. So I can show you what it looks like on my end. But I know that yours will probably look different. So when you go to your course home, you can toggle to assignments. Let me go to student view. So when you go to perusal, when you go to assignments, so you'll see library assignments, you will see article critique 1, and then you'll see article critique 1, and then you should see another one if it's been assigned to you. So check once you toggle to assignments, check and see if you see the one that I assigned for you, if you have signed up. If not, let me know and I will double check and go back to the drawing board on how to make sure that you see that. So almost everyone has signed up. A couple people need to let me know if they want to work by themselves or with a partner. And then if you haven't chosen an article, definitely do that this week so you can have that all squared away. The research proposal. So as we continue to progress, hopefully the past few weeks have been helpful for you to think about how you might choose your participants, how many participants you might need, what type of design or methods you might use to choose the participants. And then as we move on to your data collection, we went through that, interviews versus focus groups versus surveys, or if you're using a measure like an educational assessment, we talked about that. So using both of those, that should help you move on to the next steps for your research proposal, which will be October 16th, not graded, but just for feedback from me. Well, you'll talk about your issue, your question, and many of you who either have mentioned it in perusal or on Zoom, your research question will evolve a little bit as you start to make decisions about who your participants will be and what your data collection methods will be. So for that, you'll say what your potential design is. Will it be quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods? What will your data collection be in terms of what type of data do you think that you'll be collecting? You can also put in participants if you want, and then 3 potential references that you will use for the literature review portion. Okay, so chapter 11, 10, and 11 are the chapters that we did last week, all about sampling and then validity and reliability. So there were great questions. So keep the questions coming. I answered all the questions that I saw in perusal, but I'll go back again tomorrow in the coming days if there's any questions that I missed to go over there. Okay, so there weren't any main questions or issues that I wanted to discuss, so I'm just going to go through the multiple choice questions just to review the overarching themes from these chapters. So one thing that came up was a random sample, and this is important that you understand that for this week when we move on to experimental design. So random sampling, you have to use randomly selecting schools and then sampling everyone. Using the random number table to pick cases. So this was something that we discussed in the lecture. There's these random number generators that exist now that are really common, but this one here, numbering all the elements and then using a random number table to pick, would be how you get a random sample. And a random sample means that every member of the population has an equal chance of being selected. So if you are selecting, if you want a random sample of Georgia State students, you have to select the participants in a way that every single student has an equal chance of being selected. So that's what a random sample is, which is necessary for experimental design. So when a researcher is looking for people of a particular characteristic and a certain number of them, like 5 women, 5 men, that would be quota sampling. And then snowball sampling, there was great discussion about snowball sampling and some of the benefits and some of the limitations of that. I really enjoyed hearing your comments and perspectives on that. Snowball sampling is when members of a sample recommend someone else. And this is particularly useful when you are looking for people who have a particular experience. I think I shared this last week. For my dissertation, I was interviewing policymakers who were involved with the Beltline. And so once I would find one policymaker who was involved, I would interview them. And then at the end, I would ask them, like, who else do you think I should talk to? Who else was involved? And so many of the people that they mentioned were people that I'd already identified in terms of some of the network analysis that I've done and document analysis. But there were a couple instances of people who didn't come up in the public documents written about it that research participants mentioned. So that was useful in that way. And then also for something like that, when you have like a reference, sometimes that can get people to participate who might not before. So this one, the next one, so the researcher only wants students who haven't learned a particular strategy. So they would use the purposive strategy where they have a particular set of categories. They want children who have not learned the strategy. That's who they would choose for there. Okay, and then number 5, there was a typo on the answer key. So I wanted to make sure that I went over this. So in mixed methods research, there's a lot of different considerations when you are choosing participants in sampling, because you have to think about who will be included in the quantitative portion, who will be included in the qualitative portion. Are they the same? Are they different? Are you collecting the data at the same time or collecting it at different times? So here it's different samples of people, but from the same population. So for instance, you might be doing 3rd graders and you might use 3rd graders in one class for one part and then 3rd graders in another class for another part. That would be parallel. They're coming from the same population, but they are different samples. Extraneous variable. This is going to be super important to understand for chapter 12 and 13, because strong experimental design controls for extraneous variables as well as quasi-experimental design. So extraneous variables are any variables other than the independent variable that influences the dependent variable. So when you are, if you're getting confused about independent versus dependent variable, independent variable is what the researcher thinks is the cause, and the dependent variable is what they think is the effect. So for instance, if the independent variable is hours studying, the dependent variable would be like the test score or the grade. So independent variable is the intervention or whatever it is that the researcher is trying to figure out, does it work or not work when they're trying to figure out the effect. So the independent variable is the cause, and then dependent variable is the effect that you are measuring. Okay, so this next one, the time of day. So the time of day might be a confounding variable. So the control group goes in the afternoon and the experimental group goes in the morning. So that time would be a confounding variable. So when the researcher can draw a clear causal conclusion, then that has strong internal validity. Now, reflexivity, and there was some good discussion too about in qualitative research how you might garner strong validity in your study. So reflexivity is when the researcher reflects on their own biases and how that might be impacting the results that they are drawing. And so in a lot of qualitative studies, and we'll go more into depth about this, especially when you do that critique, you should expect to see a reflexivity statement where the researcher talks about their own identity and experiences and how that might impact how they interact with the data. And then the last question, this one about a mixed method study. So here, so this one, they're talking about for the quantitative portion, they collect data about when the person saw the food and when they would want to eat it. And then they interview them basically about the same thing, just asking them about their reactions. What was your reaction to that experience? And so that one has the weakness of minimization, legitimation, because the quantitative and the qualitative portions have the same weakness. They are asking them basically about the same thing. And so you see that there to where that qualitative portion doesn't inform the quantitative portion because it is not designed to look at something different or complementary. It's more so just asking about the experience. Okay, so for the week 6 checklist, so we're going to be reading chapters 12 and 13, again about experimental design and quasi-experimental design. You'll do perusal number 6. If you haven't done the article critique selection yet, do that. And then coming up next week will be the week of our midterm exam. So next week, there'll be no new chapters to read, but there still will be a perusal. I'll do a review lecture over all of the key concepts that we've covered so far. And then I'll give you some discussion questions over those and some multiple choice practice. Now, the format of the exam, it'll be 20 questions, 10 multiple choice, 10 short answer. It'll be in iCollege. I'll put a link in the announcements, and you can start it at any point throughout the week. So it'll be available August 3rd. So it'll be due October 9th. And there will be a Zoom that week if you want to come and study and ask any questions about that. So I hope you have a fabulous week, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.